Welcome to the Backseat Fighter Podcast. Here, my aim is simple. I want to bring back humility and honesty to combat sports media. As the name entails, I'm not a fighter. I've never made that walk, and nor will I ever claim to have done so. I will, however, do my best to provide honest assessments of both events and fighters. But my aim for this platform is to humanize these incredible fighters from all over the planet and contribute to healthy and respectful discussions that help grow combat sports. Thank you for watching. Welcome to episode 2 of the Backseat Fighter Podcast. Today we have my instant reactions to UFC 308. What an absolutely electrifying card. We've got my predictions for the upcoming UFC Fight Night between Royval and Albazi as the headliner. And of course, we've got our weekly discussion topic, which this week is pit culture and fans taking fighters' victories as their own and sort of the negative consequences of that. Enjoy the episode. Thank you for watching. UFC 308, the main event. Ilia knocks out Max Holloway in round 3, hits him with a straight right that wobbles him. He grabs, I think it's Max's lead hand, takes the defense away, fires the right hand down the middle, wobbles him, and that exchange ends up with Max getting hit with a bomb of a left hook. Perfect technique by Ilia. Wow. I mean, you never think you're going to see Max Holloway like that. He gets hit with that big left hook and he drops and Ilia just follows up with the shots. TKOs him. The ref has to get involved and stop, and you kind of just see Max there stare up at the sky for a second and say, damn, like, I really got caught at this time. And, you never think you're going to see Max Holloway, the granite chin that he has. But I did say in my prediction video, even though I did think Max was going to be able to pull it off, the legend that he is, that I don't think that any fighter and any human in the world can take a clean shot of Ilia Topuria, especially at that weight class. And it showed right there what happened. I think Ilia came in. He just looked so calm yet again, so patient, and just so comfortable in the moment. He just has that flow to him, that presence in the octagon where it feels like he knows something we don't. And every time it feels like he's just waiting for his moment to strike. And it's kind of similar with that Volk knockout. Like, it just felt like he was waiting to land that big shot. And I think Max was doing really well. I mean, he was catching Ilia, especially with that jab, some good shots to the body, some good right hands. I think he caught him with an elbow actually as well, like a right elbow early in the fight. And, I honestly thought it was pretty even, but it definitely looked like Ilia was setting something up, and he just absolutely lands the hell shot and finishes Max Holloway. We haven't seen that before, and hopefully we don't have to see it again, the legend that Max is. And I really just hope he comes back. Ilia did what he said he was going to do. And at this point, you got to keep believing him. He's just so technically gifted. He showed a bit of the wrestling. I think he really did a good job with Max, because Max was doing good. In some of the boxing exchanges, Max was winning. And Ilia decided that, I'm going to attack this lead leg kick like Volkanovski did and had success with in the fights with Max. Attacks that lead leg and mixed in the takedowns as well, took Max down, made him have to think about level changes in the fight as well, which probably opened up more opportunities for Ilia to really get his offense going with the hands. And I just think it was a great performance by both fighters. Obviously a big Max fan, as I said in episode 1. And, I hope Max comes back. I hope he takes his time to, just make sure he's all good and make sure the recovery is fine. And I think there's still a lot of options for Max. He's such a legend. I don't think you can take anything away from Max. He's still one of the best guys in the world. He still deserves all of his flowers. I don't want to see anybody, going in on Max. This channel is all about uplifting fighters. This podcast is all about uplifting fighters, and I want that to be the impact. I don't want any of us to hate on Max. He started a great performance, and I hope we see him back in the octagon when he's ready and feels ready to do so. Ilia Topuria, I think we're going to see him fight Volkanovski next. Volk came in the cage. Ilia gave a very respectful comment saying if anyone deserves a rematch, it's Volkanovski, which is completely fair and true. And I think that's what we're going to see next. And, that's a competitive fight. Maybe Volk with a little bit of time off now, although he is coming off the knockout loss to Ilia, maybe with a little bit of time off and, a full training camp where he's not coming off a concussion. Maybe we'll see something else, but you got to think at this point that Ilia is just the best fighter, definitely in his division, obviously, but he definitely has an argument for best fighter in the world. Just the way he's so well-rounded, that Greco-Roman base in terms of the wrestling that he showed, the hands, obviously, and just his IQ and flow. And yeah, he just looked amazing tonight. Now let's move on to the co-main event. Wow. Just trying to give my little instant reactions here, but the co-main event between Khamzat Chimaev and Robert Whittaker. In my predictions video, my predictions podcast, or prediction section of the podcast, I was leaning towards Khamzat, but I did pull out of the prediction. I wanted to respect Robert Whittaker for the fighter that he is, and I didn't want to, rule him out. I really thought that if it got to the late rounds somehow, that, if he could survive that early Khamzat storm, that we would see, maybe a Robert Whittaker win here. But Khamzat, wow. He's made a lot of comments that would lead you to believe that before in his past training camps, he didn't really have the structure necessary to perform at the highest level, and he was still undefeated, still beating the best in the world. It looks like his new training camp, his new team, moving his family to Abu Dhabi, becoming more focused, more professional, and trying to clear some of that negativity out of his life, just outside of the cage, has even improved him. He just went straight for Robert Whittaker, got the finish in round 1. And you've seen the images coming out for Robert Whittaker after the fight. Everybody's a bit surprised that he tapped so quickly in terms of when Khamzat locked that choke in. It was more like, I think, a neck crank. I don't really know. It was kind of I believe it was over the jaw instead of under the neck. And wow. He actually, those images that Robert Whittaker released showed his teeth, I think, being broken or pushed back in his mouth. They know he had a broken jaw or a dislocated jaw just from the pure squeeze of Khamzat Chimaev. So we've just got to put respect on Khamzat Chimaev's name. He's definitely in the title picture now. There's no way around that. Does he jump the queue? Does he jump Sean Strickland for that title shot? I think that's definitely going to be a debate now. And you'd have to argue, just based on previous fights, on their last fights, who deserves it more. You'd have to go for Chimaev. But let's see, Sean Strickland probably will get the shot against DDP, that rematch of that title fight that's already happened where DDP came out on top. And I think we're going to see Khamzat fight for the title in the very, very near future. And if he can pull off another performance like that, I mean, that's for me one of his most dominant performances, especially to do it against a guy like Robert Whittaker on such a big card, on such a big platform after, a very, very tough time that he's gone through. And, we really want to humanize these fighters. For Khamzat, I'm just very happy for him personally that he's been able to get through the struggles that he's gone through, the challenges that he's faced with the illnesses, with his son, with some scandals, with, just having to move country and all those things. And, just being a fighter in general, the pressures that come with that. And I think him being in a more positive place in his life has contributed to his performance there. And Robert Whittaker, I mean, he's still a legend. He's still a veteran, still got plenty left in the tank. I don't think there's any reason for us to, give up on Robert Whittaker at all. He's still got a chance to, get himself back in the title picture. I don't know exactly where he goes from next here. So we're going to have to see what Robert Whittaker wants to do next. But, I think Robert Whittaker came in prepared for exchanges like that. The very severely intense wrestling exchanges, the defense that he was going to have to do against Khamzat Chimaev. But I don't think he expected to get his jaw broken just off the pure squeeze that Khamzat generates, the force that he generates when he's on your back. So great fight, great co-main event to set up the main event. And Khamzat comes out with the first round finish. Dominant performance from, the title contender now that you have to admit he is. So amazing fight. Before that, obviously, you had Magomed Ankalaev versus Rakic. This was a fight that I almost forgot to do my predictions on. And wow, delivered again. I thought maybe just a pure entertainment factor for the casual MMA fan probably wasn't their favorite fight to watch. But for Magomed Ankalaev fans, this is a really good performance from him. He was going for the win. I thought Rakic was definitely trying to disengage, keep his range, and pick his shots. And Magomed Ankalaev just kept that pressure on, kept looking for that big left hand. I mean, I said a comment to one of the people I was watching the fights with. Maybe if he just took 10, 15% off those big left hands that he was trying to land on Rakic, maybe he would land a couple more and maybe get the finish. Because I think, in the current light heavyweight picture and the way the UFC kind of put Khalil in that position in front of him, and not saying anything bad about Khalil, I think Khalil definitely deserved a title shot as well. But, sometimes the UFC is about entertainment factor, and he got it done, and it was dominant, and he was definitely the clear rightful winner. So he's definitely got to be next for the title, I think, at light heavyweight. And Alexander Rakic has to, he's showed a decent performance in terms of, the first round especially, and he's got all the attributes. He's got the size. He's got, the technique to be a real contender in this division. I just think he's still trying to find his identity in terms of competing with the top guys in that division at the moment. And hopefully Rakic can come back and put on a good performance. And I think we're going to definitely see Ankalaev in a title fight soon with the champ, Alex Poatan Pereira. The fight before that, Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige. This was a fight that I really, really heavily analyzed and was really excited to watch, especially after my predictions in episode 1 of the Backseat Fighter podcast. And this is where you saw Lerone Murphy do exactly what I said. I was very happy with my prediction because a lot of the attributes that I saw in that Edson Barboza fight, that resilience, that heart, and that composure he had to show again in this Dan Ige fight. I didn't want to take Dan Ige lightly at all. Dan Ige is a BMF. Dan Ige is a real fighter. And, he hit Lerone Murphy with a bomb in that fight, dropped Lerone Murphy, wobbled Lerone Murphy, I think. And, just to see Lerone again show that composure and, survive that round 1 and then come into round 2 and win round 2 straight away. And then in round 3, keeping that kind of using his jab, using the body attacks to slow down Dan Ige. And even in that last exchange, that last 20 seconds of round 3 to end the fight, you see Lerone Murphy dig deeper and go for the win and try and impress the judges, try and get some more damage in on Dan Ige just to secure that round 3 and secure the fight. I thought it was just such an amazing performance from Lerone Murphy, excuse me. And, I was just very, very happy to see not only that he did well, that they put on a good show. I mean, the grappling exchanges were amazing. You had them each reversing positions over and over again. And, at one point in the round 3, I believe that Lerone Murphy did shoot for a takedown on Dan Ige there. And for a second, I thought, oh, that's a mistake. If he can't get up, if Dan Ige can hold him down, maybe Dan Ige gets out of here with a win. But yes, Lerone Murphy, great performance from him, still undefeated. I think that's, his 5th fight in Abu Dhabi inside the UFC. And it seems like he loves to fight that he always wins. So, so I love that performance from Lerone Murphy. I think Dan Ige showed yet again that he's just got that power in his hands, and maybe he tired himself out trying to finish the fight in round 1, but you can't blame him for that at all. I mean, Lerone Murphy really looked on the edge of losing and the edge of just losing and not coming out on top in that fight, but he persevered and showed that heart again, that champion's resilience that I think is going to mean this is a top 10, top 5 elite lightweight fighter in the world right now, especially in the UFC, especially coming out of England. We've got more fighters coming out of the region from our country. So, it was a great job by Lerone Murphy. And I think the fight before that, I just don't want to make sure I'm missing any of these, was Shara Bullet versus Armen Petrosyan. I mean, wow. I've said that a lot, but I am just blown away by this card. It delivered in the best ways possible for all of the fans and media. So, yeah, Shara Bullet, wow. I mean, in my predictions video, I said that I did think this was going to be a good fight. It was going to be a stand-up fight, entertaining fight, because you've got 2 kickboxers here. I thought Petrosyan was actually doing really well to pressure Shara in the first round. But you just see Shara, get his timing, get his range. And then from that point on, he just, as I said in my predictions video, pick him off artistically, creatively, imaginatively, but also with this level of viciousness. So, you had and viciousness and expertise, right? You had that side kick to the body that kept putting Petrosyan, pushing him, keeping that range. You saw the leg kicks come out, and then obviously, my lord, the timing that Shara Bullet has in terms of just his awkward rhythm, offbeat striking is so good. And I was watching with a couple of people, and one of us was saying that he needs to throw a spinning attack, needs to throw more spinning attacks, and then you just see him fake for, I think he was trying to do like a teep or a knee stomp to try and, like, I guess basically break a Petrosyan's knee, and he fakes that because he'd thrown it a couple of times, or he was faking a side kick to the body again, fakes that, throws a spinning back fist, and off that spinning back fist throws another spinning back fist the other way, and just walk off KOs Armen Petrosyan. I mean, he definitely deserved one of the performances of the night. I think he did get one in the end, and wow, I mean, this guy's a star, another undefeated fighter on this card, and he delivered yet again. All around, an amazing card. If there's anything I've missed in my instant reactions here, I'm sure I'll get to it in episode 2, which you're currently watching. And wow, such an amazing UFC card. Great to watch it in the middle of the day here. Main card started at 2 p.m. Eastern time, and wow, we've got a lot to look forward to in the UFC. And wow, I'm just very, very impressed with the fighters who came out on top today. We went 4 out of 5 in our predictions. Obviously, Max Holloway wasn't able to get the win, but you've got to give all credit to Ilia Topuria just for the level of fight IQ that he showed, just mixing it up with the wrestling, the leg kicks, and the boxing, and just the devastating finishing ability that he has. Volk for him next, maybe for Max Holloway. I think DC on the broadcast afterwards was saying maybe a Conor McGregor versus Max Holloway. I mean, I think the fans would be interested in that. I think the media would be interested in that. And, here's to more conversations for helping MMA grow, and back to episode 2. So let's get into the fight night predictions for the weekend. Obviously, we've got the headliner of Moreno versus Albazi, so that's where we're going to start, but we'll go through every single fight on the main card as always. Now, I'm going to start my analysis with Moreno. I think he deserves that as, a former champ and somebody who's given us absolutely great entertaining fights over the years. Let's just start with him. So he's obviously got a wealth of championship experience. I mean, this is a man who's been in 5-round fight after 5-round fight. So I think that does benefit him that it is a main event here against Albazi. Obviously, Moreno is a super well-rounded fighter and he's super fast. I mean, he can enter the pocket and get in and out of range so quickly and obviously handle himself in all areas of the fight, not just the striking, not just the grappling, but he does a really good job of connecting all of that together. And he is coming off of these 2 losses, obviously one to Pantoja, the current champion, and Royval, who he was on a hot streak, who just won himself in another great performance. Now, this is an 8-month break for Moreno, an 8-month break for Moreno, which kind of has come at a weird time. And when he was first speaking about taking a break, many feared that it would be longer, but it only has been 8 months. I mean, I think he fought Royval in February, so it's not been too long of a layoff for him, but he has said this fight week that this kind of small break in the grand scheme of things, but for him, a huge break, has done wonders for his injuries that he was taking into fight camps and fights, but more than anything, his mental state. He said he was feeling the weight of this responsibility that he was carrying on his shoulders to go into these fights, and he looks like he's enjoying himself again. He said that he feels like he's just entered the UFC again, and he's excited to do the media. He's excited about the fight. He was excited about the training. So that's really good to see and very promising for him going into this fight, of course. I'm now going to switch over to Albazi for a second because I want to analyze kind of what I've seen from his fighting style and what I've seen from his last couple of fights that I think then will help me analyze what I think Moreno could do in this fight. So Albazi, he has a super interesting story. He had to flee his country because of Saddam Hussein. He's just such a super interesting story. And I know that he also did train at London Shoot Fighters for a while, the MMA gym in London, or the main MMA gym in London, I would say. It hosts Michael Venom Page. It even has the boxer Derek Chisora training there as well. I think KSI actually trains there as well for his fights. But let me get more focused. Obviously, Albazi is coming off the win against Kai Kara France, which I think many thought probably went Kai Kara France's way, or should have done, rather. And before that, he came off a round 3 knockout over Costa, which, was a very decent knockout. I think it was an uppercut, if I'm not mistaken. But, great knockout, great finish. He's also 17-1. He's only lost 1 time in his entire career. And I think what I'm going to talk about mostly is that performance in the Kai Kara France fight. And they have a shared opponent in Kai Kara France, because Moreno also beat Kai Kara France, if you don't remember, by kicking the body and just sitting Kai Kara France down and finishing the fight from there. But let me get into this Albazi performance against Kai Kara France. What he does so well in all of his fights, not just this one, is take control of the center of the octagon. And he is kind of a bigger flyweight. He looks bigger than his opponents in there every single time, which, he might cut a lot of weight. I don't know. But, it means he's very, very explosive. So he does this thing where he kind of feints, the takedown feints, the level change. And then once he gets you kind of in this offbeat rhythm, not kind of like second guessing yourself, not knowing which way to exit off the cage, is then when he throws a big explosive shot that can be quite devastating or can help him kind of transition into the takedown attempt, right? I think he's a huge puncher and he's got a good jab as well. And he looks obviously physically strong. But when I'm saying he's good at level changing and threatening the level change, and actually, at grappling enough where you do genuinely have to be worried about the level change, he's not really great at setting up his shots traditionally in that sense. He's not going to throw a 1-2, move around, do crazy footwork or slick footwork and start teeing off on you. He's just not going to do that. And he's not going to throw punches in long combinations that are extremely damaging. I think what I noticed also in that Kai Kara France is that when Albazi was throwing, let's say, that good jab he has, after a couple of rounds, Kai Kara France started to realize and started to understand the timing of that jab. So he would kind of block, I think it was with the right hand, kind of block the jab on the parry or with the back of his right hand and throw instantly off and connect with Albazi off of the jab. So he would stand there, wait for the jab to come and throw instantly off the jab, which I thought was working really, really well for Kai Kara France in that fight. I think where I see Albazi having success in this fight is, again, with that octagon presence, with that constant forward pressure, pinning his opponent up against the cage and being able to set up that big fight, that big punch, that big, explosive action that he usually likes to set up in his fights. And, I see that as a way for him to do well, because if we look at Moreno's last fight against Royval, he was constantly backed up by Royval against the cage. And I think that's where he really lost the fight, in my opinion. Now, I also think, Moreno can kind of sort of lead. I'm going to transition back to Moreno, pardon me. I think Moreno can kind of set up that dead space. If Moreno pushes forward first and establishes dominance in the octagon, establishes himself in the center of the octagon, or even pushes Albazi back to the cage a little bit if he can, I think that he can kind of lure him into a dead space. Like Mighty Mouse likes to use the term the void. I'm going to use dead space. I think if he can get Albazi up against the cage and then kind of step back, let Albazi come forward again, step back, let Albazi come forward again, and then kind of let Albazi move forward, but hold your ground this time and fire from there in the middle of the octagon, I think he can have huge success with that. I think, Moreno's speed and volume are going to be key to this fight to keep Albazi moving backwards to then lure him into that dead space, because his pressure, his presence in the octagon is absolutely insane. Like Kara France did in that fight, I think Moreno needs to be firing off of Albazi's jab, because he does have a great jab, but he's not a super active jabber and he's not going to throw combinations off of the jab. So that if he throws that left jab coming forward out of the orthodox stance, that straight right down the pipe is going to be there for Moreno. And I hope he decides to use that. I think, again, switching it now, I think the way Moreno beat Kai Kara France could also be useful here. I think he's going to have to go to the body. He's got a great body kick. And I think if he can get that body kick landing on Albazi just to slow him down, just to slow down the pressure of Albazi and kind of use his own cardio to his advantage. I know Moreno's been in these 5-round fights so many times. So if he can kind of extend the fight into the later rounds, I think it obviously gives him a better chance. I am going to go Moreno by decision in this fight. And I just think it's because, quick summary, I think, he's got more championship experience. He's coming off a break where he's healed up on his injuries. He's mentally refreshed. He's still young. I think he's only 30 years old. He's still going to have that speed, still going to have that aggression. And, I just see Albazi as he's not active enough. His presence is there. He's pressuring you towards the fight, but he's actually not towards the fence, but he's actually not throwing a lot of punches or throwing a lot of strikes that are going to threaten damage. So I do think that's why I'm going to take Moreno by decision, because I don't think Albazi is going to be able to output or to make sure he's delivering an output with enough damage in this fight. And I see Moreno being able to take advantage of kind of luring him into a dead space and striking and maybe possibly getting a finish. But I think a decision is more likely. Albazi is a tough guy, and I think it's going to be a great fight. My prediction is Moreno by decision. Let's move into the second fight of the night, or the co-main event, I should actually say. It's Doug Rose versus Erin Blanchfield. I mean, this is also a great fight. I really do believe that this is going to be a competitive fight, but I've done a lot of tape study on these two women, and I think, it might be, I've come to a decision, and I think it's going to be the right decision. So obviously, let's start with Rose again. What an absolute beast of a woman this is. The things she's done in her career, the finishes of Weili Zhang, the victories over Joanna, and of course, I think recently, and this kind of lead into my discussion topic later, I think recently we've kind of had this idea of Rose that she's not one of the baddest women on the planet, which she is. But that performance against Carla Esparza, she just came off that loss to Manon Fiorot before her last fight against Tracy Cortez. And of course, I remember her getting slammed on the head by Andrade. But, this is still one of the baddest women on the planet. Her technique is insane. I think in that last fight against Tracy Cortez, she showed that she's still got these incredible tools in her game, in her arsenal, especially offensively. Just not even, doesn't even have this like vicious power. But the way she's finished people and the way she damages people is through just perfect technique. And I think that's a very key factor in this fight, especially on the feet, of course. I'm going to go to Blanchfield now and then back to why I think Rose is probably going to get the victory here. Blanchfield, wow. I mean, she's had an incredible rise in the UFC. I think she's only 25 years old. So to be fighting the level of opponent she's fighting at right now is insane. She's got the victory where I kind of really took notice of her, call me a casual, is when she dominated Molly Meatball. Obviously, I'm English. I was rooting for Molly in that fight, but the way she was able to dominate Molly on the ground and threaten that Kimura over and over again, and she had her in she was in a mounted crucifix position, just teeing away with elbows and strikes to the face. And Molly, I think she literally said the F word and was like screaming kind of out in pain or shouting out in pain and kind of despair that entire fight, as short as it was. And I remember when Erin Blanchfield got up and she won that fight, when Molly tapped out due to the submission, which was totally the correct thing to do. I mean, she was very close to, I think, breaking her arm in that position. And Erin Blanchfield gets up, dusts off her shoulders, and I feel like she just developed this confidence, this aura, and kind of established herself in the UFC as one of these really, really top-level fighters. And, I think she took that confidence into the Manon Fiorot fight. I mean, again, these two, kind of similar to Moreno and Albazi, have a shared opponent in Manon Fiorot. And, I think that Manon Fiorot fight from the tape I watched, Erin Blanchfield was pressuring forward. She was definitely trying to compete on the feet. She tried to get the takedowns. She couldn't really get there in the end or threaten her submission game. And I think Manon Fiorot kind of just outclassed her on the feet in this striking. And obviously Manon Fiorot is a huge, huge woman for the weight class, really strong, but also very technically gifted as well. And I just noticed that obviously Erin Blanchfield in that fight was showing that she had that dog inside of her, showing that she had the fight, went all 5 rounds. But at the same time, she was entering exchanges kind of with her chin in the air, throwing multiple punches with her chin in the air. And those are the things that you really can't do against an opponent like Rose Namajunas. Now, in that fight against Manon Fiorot, what I did notice is that she has a really, really good body kick out of the orthodox stance. So I do expect Erin Blanchfield on the feet in the exchanges with Rose to use that body kick out of the orthodox stance to kind of slow down Rose, to kind of do damage, and to make sure that she's kind of earning her pointing, earning her respect on the feet. But let me move back to Rose here. And, Rose also against Manon Fiorot, I think she broke a finger. No excuses. Manon Fiorot still beat her fair and square, but, Rose didn't come out on top in her debut in this weight class. But I think that Rose is going to be looking at that Erin Blanchfield versus Manon Fiorot fight and looking to kind of emulate a little bit what Manon Fiorot's strategy was. What Manon Fiorot's strategy was. So I think Rose in this fight on the feet needs to be looking for the knee to the body, teeps to the body, and kind of any side kicks or anything that can keep Erin Blanchfield at range, especially in the sense that Erin Blanchfield doesn't have great defense on the feet and she kind of just walks forward and stumbles into shots. So I'm looking for, anything like knee stomps if possible, teep kicks, and it's side kicks to the body. And I do believe that, if Rose can keep the fight standing, she's obviously got skills on the ground as well, but if she can keep the fight standing in her wheelhouse and use all of that offensive arsenal and the amazing technique that she has, I do believe Rose will come out on top and get a decision here and possibly a finish. But I'm going to go, again, Rose by decision. And I think it's going to be a great fight. I think Erin Blanchfield has that that youthful energy about her and that youthful up-and-coming competition and grit in her game. And I think, she could well and truly go on to have a great performance and possibly win, but I am going to go Rose by decision. Derek Lewis versus Deniz. Wow. So, we all know who Derek Lewis is. I think he's got the most knockouts in UFC history, probably the heaviest hands of any fighter in the organization at the moment and on the roster. I'm going to talk a lot about Deniz here. From his, debut in the Contender Series against Eduardo Neves, from his fights against Austin Lane and Carl Williams. So I think he's got 3 fights in total, I guess, in the UFC, or 1 in the Contender Series and 2 in the UFC. I think he only made his debut in 2022 in MMA. He comes from a kickboxing background, great kickboxer. He showed off really good technical ability, especially in that Carl Williams fight. He has a really great leg kick. The calf kick that he throws, I think that's going to be a huge factor in this fight, by the way, if obviously we don't just get to standing and banging. But obviously he beats Carl Williams in a unanimous decision. He's got this great left hook where he jumps into range and can hit you with the left hook. And, he's got a great straight right as well. Again, that Austin Lane fight, Austin Lane obviously got flatlined. But again, I did notice that Deniz was still getting hit. So obviously he gets the KOs. He got the unanimous decision against Carl Williams. He got the KO against Austin Lane. And he shows this great technical ability on the feet. He's a big guy, but he's light on his feet. He's in and out of range quickly. But I do notice that he does get hit. Now, obviously, these heavyweights are big and they're fast, and you're gonna inevitably take damage in the heavyweight division. But I do believe that, Derek Lewis, even at his older age and many years in the UFC, I do believe that he has a chance in this fight if he connects with Deniz on the chin. But more technically, if you had to say like who's got more options to win this fight, I obviously believe that is Deniz, and you could say that with all of Derek Lewis's opponents, and many times he's still come out on top. But I do believe that, I do believe that Deniz is going to come out on top here with the finish. I just think he's got the leg kicks that are so good that I think if he implements those leg kicks, he's really going to slow down Derek Lewis and be able to kind of patiently deconstruct Derek Lewis over time in this fight. I think, if he goes in there all guns blazing, obviously it's a 50-50 fight. This is heavyweight. If Derek Lewis connects with you, you're going to sleep. So I'm not putting like all my eggs in one basket, but I will pick Deniz if I have to, if you had a gun to my head. But I really, truly believe in Deniz's ability. I see the potential that he has. And, obviously that kickboxing background that, is actually quite prominent in the UFC right now. You've got Alex Pereira, obviously, Izzy Adesanya, which are 2, traditional kickboxers or kickboxing legends that have transitioned so well into MMA. I'd love to see how this is going to work in the heavyweight division. And, I'm expecting Deniz to put on the best performance of his career so far. It's a great name to have on your record, great scalp to have on the career resume. So I'm looking for Deniz to win this fight, but obviously Derek Lewis in his last fight against Nascimento, wow. And in that fight against Nascimento, he showed that he could kind of, he did some great trips. He was able to get up off the ground, and obviously he knocks him out in the end. But, I'm going to go with Deniz for that fight, and hopefully we just get a fight that's for the fans. So that's all you can really ask for, right? But let me just say on Derek Lewis really quick. I think he's kind of underrated in some sense. Obviously, he's got this power throughout the entire fight. I mean, I remember that Volkov knockout. I think it was literally, he was about to lose. He had lost every round, and he just kills Volkov and does his signature celebration on the ground where he sticks his tongue out. But he also showed in that most recent fight against Nascimento a great check left hook. And Deniz does have the tendency to come into exchanges vulnerable to shots. So I think if Derek Lewis can time Deniz's entrances into the pocket and fire that left hook, he kind of lunged into it against Nascimento. If he can do that against Deniz, I think he definitely has an avenue to victory here. But again, I'm going to go with Deniz, and I think he's just going to break Derek Lewis down through the leg kicks, through a variety of shots, and obviously he has that power knockout ability as well at heavyweight. So the next fight on this card that I'm going to predict is the light heavyweight matchup between Machado and Brenson Ribeiro. I mean, I saw a recent clip of Machado's knockout when he was in Battlefield Fight. Is it Battlefield Fight League? And it was a crazy knockout. He's kind of falling backwards, and he hits the guy with a monstrous left hook and just puts him out cold. I think this is going to be a pretty decent fight here. I know I've seen Brenson's fight before. I know he's been knocked out, to be honest, against, what was his name? Let me just check here for you. He's coming against Zhang Mingyang. I remember that knockout. It was a crazy knockout by Zhang Mingyang, but Brenson has shown the ability to strike, and I think Brenson is going to win this fight. His striking, I just believe, is more clean, and he's able to catch people on the very end of his strikes. So he's got really good technique of kind of turning the punch over, and I think he might win this fight by finish. But I don't honestly want to put too much pressure on myself to make a decision here. But I am going to take Brenson Ribeiro by knockout just because I've seen his ability to stand with guys, even if his back is on the cage. He feels comfortable in that position because he feels like he can piece you up on the hand or with the hands and on the feet. So I'm going to take Brenson Ribeiro on that fight, even though I am sure Machado can get it done as well. Marc-Andre Barriault versus Dustin Stoltzfus. I think they're both coming off a 2-loss streak here. I think that this is a difficult fight to predict. I know that Marc-Andre is coming off a knockout loss to Pfeiffer, which I believe was at UFC 303 or 300. Let me check, actually. I believe it was at UFC 303. Yeah, it was at UFC 303. He's coming off a knockout loss to Joe Pfeiffer, which was, getting knocked out by Joe Pfeiffer is not anything to be ashamed of. The guy is an absolute beast, hits like a truck. I think he has the unofficial record of punching power at the UFC PI. But if I'm being honest with you, I also saw his fight against Chris Curtis. And I just think Marc-Andre has too much of a tendency to give up the center of the octagon. He's not got that presence like an Amir Albazi has. But, not every fighter needs to fight like that. But he really, really gives up the center of the octagon. And, I think he just kind of plods forward too much, and he doesn't have much of a strategy in terms of his movement inside the cage, in terms of his footwork. He kind of plods forward into range that leaves him at risk to take strikes and, to get himself finished. And I think, the best thing I've seen from him is when he makes the fight ugly. If he can get you and pin you up against the cage, he does a really good job of, kind of dirty boxing in the clinch. And, this is something I saw him do against Eric Anders and Julian Marquez, actually. I think he knocked out Julian Marquez in round 2 when I watched that fight. And I think that's something he needs to be doing more. It's kind of just making it ugly. Make this fight ugly, and I think he has a chance because he's not going to be a guy that's going to, snipe you off the feet. And, you know, it is in Canada, home country, home turf. So I'm sure he's hoping to get the win for the Canadian fans. And, you know, I honestly think this is a 50-50 fight. You've got Dustin Stoltzfus. I think he's coming off a KO loss as well to Bruno Ferreira, who's an absolute beast. I think he just lost this past weekend at UFC 308. But I think I see this as a 50-50 fight. If I had to put my money on it, I would go for... I don't know. I'm actually really confused on this one. I'll go for Marc-Andre just because he's at home, and you know you always want to see the home guy win usually. So I think if he can just kind of do what he does best. Don't try and go in there and become an excellent striker, become a guy that's going to pick you off from the outside range, from long range. No. Get in there, instead of giving up the center of the octagon, put pressure on the opponent, get him up against the cage and make this fight dirty. Get those little shots in on the inside in the clinch, and I'm sure he'll be able to come out with a decision win here in this fight. But, you know, he has got power. Obviously, he knocked out... what's his name? Julian Marquez in that first fight, on that fight in 2023. So I believe that, you know, he can definitely knock Stoltzfus out, but I'm just going to have to see him kind of adapt to the way he approaches the fight in terms of his aggressiveness and pressure inside the octagon. So now we're going to predict the last fight on the card, and that is Mike Malot versus Trevin Giles. Wow. So I know these guys have actually grappled before, and Mike Malot came out on top. I don't know exactly when they did that. I think I saw a video very recently, or whilst I was doing research for this video, of them grappling, and Mike Malot came out on top, obviously. You know, Mike Malot is one of those very, 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 very interesting people in terms of his career so far in the UFC. I mean, he came off a great performance in the Dana White Contender Series. And throughout his UFC career so far, I mean, he's shown incredible ability on the ground. You know, I think he's got, you know, quite a few submissions. I think on his record, he's got 6 submissions, and a lot of them are guillotine chokes, right? He won against Adam Fugit by guillotine. He won against Johan Lanesi by an arm triangle choke. He won against Shimon Smotritsky in the Contender Series via guillotine choke as well. And before that, he had just come off a rear naked choke win. So this is a guy that's super dangerous on the ground. And to be honest, I think that's where he's going to have to look to use that grappling ability in this fight, considering he also has a grappling victory over Trevin Giles. You know, Trevin is coming off a KO loss to Carlos Prates. And, you know, he's lost by guillotine many times in his career. Multiple times in his career. He's super smooth on the feet. You know, I watched his fight against Preston Parsons, and he's got a great jab, right? So I really do believe that on the feet, this is anyone's fight. But if I'm Malot, I'm not even Malot, sorry for butchering the name. I'm not going into this fight looking to stand on the feet with this guy. I'm looking to try and get the submission, especially early in the round where they're both dry. The thing about Mike Malot is that he's coming off this weird loss to Neil Magny, where he was kind of winning the fight, and then in the last minute or two of the third round, he completely gassed out, and, you know, Neil Magny was able to get full mount and just unload shots on him. And, you know, it didn't look like he was landing the most powerful shots of all time, but Mike Malot just couldn't deal with it, and the ref had to intervene. And, you know, Neil Magny came out with the veteran, you know, the wily veteran came out with a comeback win. And, you know, these are the things that kind of make you doubt Mike Malot. You know, I really believe in this guy. I don't really have that much doubt in him that he's going to be able to get the win here. But I do understand why maybe some people are looking at his most recent performance and saying, I'm not sure about this guy. You know, I think what we're looking for, what my prediction is going to be for this fight is for Mike Malot to get a submission win. I think he's going to get a guillotine in the first or second round. This is one of those fights that there was a bunch of footage to watch. There was a bunch of things to go off on both of their records that have allowed me to make this prediction. I feel very confident in both picking, you know, a finish, a submission, and the type of submission. And I think it's going to be in the first 2 rounds. But, you know, I could be wrong. And, you know, this is not a channel where we are, as we'll be talking about very, very soon in our discussion, this is not a channel where we're going to be talking about picks like they're mine. You know, these victories are not mine. These performances are not mine. These are the special, unique, awesome fighters that are fighting in the UFC right now. And whichever way it goes, I'm a fan of Mike Malot's game. If Mike Malot loses this weekend, that doesn't mean I think Mike Malot is not a good fighter or that he was fraud checked or anything like that. I just, maybe Trevin Giles, uses that great jab that I spoke about, uses his great ability on the feet. So it may be the Trevin Giles that fought Preston Parsons showed up, and there's nothing Mike Malot can do about it. So I really believe that this is going to be a great card. I'm going to go over my picks now. So I've got Moreno by decision. I've got Rose by decision. I've got Deniz against Luis. Luis. I turned Derek Lewis into Brazilian, bro. I've got Deniz against Derek Lewis. I think Deniz is going to win that fight, I believe, by decision or finish. I've got Ribeiro just piecing up Machado on the feet and coming out with a win. I've got Marc-Andre probably winning that fight if he can apply pressure to Stoltzfus and get him up against the cage and use his dirty boxing. And I've got Mike Malot via guillotine in the first or second round. Thank you so much for listening to the fight predictions. And now on to this week's discussion. So this week's discussion is about pit culture in MMA fandom and in MMA media. And now you might be saying, that's super hypocritical. You just spent half an hour making your picks for the upcoming UFC Fight Night. Well, that is true. But I hope that you guys can see that I'm doing it with a certain nuance and a certain objective and a certain level of detail, effort and analysis and research that, these are informed picks. And again, like I just said with Mike Malot, these picks are not anything to do with, whether or not a fighter wins or not should not affect whether you are a fan of them or not necessarily, right? So this is where I want to kind of go with it. And we're just going to go through, maybe half an hour, maybe less, about why I think pit culture is pretty much a big problem in MMA media and MMA fandom in general. I think the biggest reason, and we'll kind of weave our way into it, the biggest reason I find it as a problem is that it takes away from the appreciation of these fighters. And this channel is entirely about uplifting fighters, appreciating them, humanizing them, and how that can make us bigger fans and better journalists of the sport, right? When you go on and you are like an average fan and you're setting your parlay and the fighter in the main event that you picked at the end of your 5-leg parlay doesn't win, and now you're starting to call that fighter washed, or he's a horrible fighter, or it's somehow his fault, right, for not winning, then we start to get into a murky area, right, where we're not even looking at these fighters as humans who have just gone through a 12-week fight camp, who have just cut weight, who have made all of these sacrifices, who haven't spent as much time with their loved ones as they would have liked. All of these hardships that they've gone through, maybe they've got injuries, maybe they've had personal issues that they haven't been able to use as reasons to pull out the fight, or they've gone along with the fight anyway. They've put their life on the line for your entertainment. And then we start hearing, the abuse that's come along with all of this stuff, right? And I'm not even blaming sports gambling or, anything like that. I'm not doing that at all. I am saying that it's on the responsibility of individuals to not go there. The flip side of that is what I really wanted to talk about is fans taking fighters' victories as their own. So a lot of the times, fans will make picks and it's always an I told you so type of moment, right? Like, this is not the way for me to appreciate fighters or the sport in itself. We can't be making predictions based on the motivation to be right or the motivation to tell others that we're right, because that just takes away from who actually did the thing. It wasn't you because you were able to look at the fight and say, I think he's going to win, that somehow you're now sharing necessarily in that success of that fighter. No, that was on the fighter, that was on the fight camp, that was on the training they did, all the recovery, all the dieting, all the weight cutting, all the sacrifices they have made. That's the fighter's success. And I think there is a clear division that needs to be made so that when a fighter wins, we're not taking credit as journalists or fans for their success and their victory. And we're not blaming them as kind of it's not like it's kind of like this kind of paradox, right? Fans and journalists will take credit if they guess the fighter winning correctly, but then will instantly kind of like blame them, and there's hate comments and abuse for when they lose. So it's all on the fighters if they lose, but it's kind of like a shared victory if they win. So I think that's kind of what a lot of fighters probably feel, and why they feel like MMA fans are so fickle, especially in the media as well. Like they probably feel that media is so fickle. But this is where I want to kind of nuance this discussion, right? I'm not saying that we shouldn't be fans of fighters. I've got Max Holloway, I've got Alex Pereira and Izzy on the wall here. I've got a canvas lying over there waiting to go up on the wall that's got Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz on it. So I'm not saying do not follow these fighters. Do not be happy when they win. Obviously, like I was sad that Max Holloway lost because I'm a big fan of his, but I will never, I guess my point is, now that Max Holloway has lost, I'm not a fan of him. And I'm not now saying, damn, he lost and I think he's washed and he should retire instantly, which I feel like a lot of these fighters get as soon as they lose, especially if they have been on top for a long time. I think probably for me, the biggest, most recent example is obviously Max Holloway. People calling for him to retire. If your basis for calling for Max to retire is because you're worried about the amount of damage he's taken over his career. Obviously, he's absorbed the most strikes in UFC history, and he's obviously just kind of suffered quite a harsh knockout for the first time in his career. If that's your motivation for thinking Max should retire, it's understandable at least. If you're looking out for fighter safety, I completely there with you for that. I think, Max a long time ago could have said, if he was done for the sport, he could have said, I'm done, and walked away with a great legacy. And that's, Max deserves the ability to go out on his own. But if you're now saying Max is washed, he can't hang with the best, he's now washed because he got knocked out by Ilia Topuria. These are the things that pit culture and fans taking fighters' performances, victories and losses as kind of their own things, taking away that value. And I guess I want to say like taking the agency away from the fighter, taking the voice, taking the importance away from the fighter onto themselves. If that's your basis, if you're saying he's now washed and he can't hang with the best of them, that he shouldn't maybe move up to 155 and explore his options there, then I just simply disagree with you. And I think that you're contributing to negativity in the sport. I think another big example of this recently is Kamaru, the Nigerian nightmare Usman. I mean, for me, when I was watching Kamaru in those fights against Colby Covington and those fights against Jorge Masvidal, when he beat Tyron Woodley to get the title. I mean, a lot of people are saying if he keeps this up, he's going to be the greatest welterweight of all time, right? So we're saying somebody is one of the greatest fighters of all time in Kamaru Usman, which is still a fact. But obviously he gets, after dominating, or I want to say dominating and beating Leon Edwards, my fellow countryman, for a long time in Utah, in Salt Lake City, he obviously gets head kicked. Right? Clean, great head kick, great moment. Love that for Leon Edwards. Love that for my country as an MMA region. Obviously, I was to be honest, I was sad to see Usman like that. You never want to see one of these great champions be head kicked, knocked out like that. Just because it was such a vicious knockout that you don't know if somebody's going to be the same after that. In terms of, for me, again, it's not about their fighting ability. As in terms of a person, like how is that going to affect you on a human level? I think Kamaru has spoken about depression after fights, both after victories and the come down from the adrenaline and the dopamine hit and the serotonin, but also obviously after losses. How hard is it to get back on your feet, to get back in the gym, etc. But getting back to the main point, everyone said now then when he rematched Leon Edwards for the third fight in London, which I actually had the privilege of going to, after that fight, he's washed. No, he's obviously just taken a huge knockout and come back and fought the same guy just a matter of months later, right? And, he didn't have a terrible performance in that fight. He didn't get knocked out again, did he? And, he was able to stay in that fight, and obviously he lost the decision, and probably so, right? Probably a correct decision. He then comes in on 9 days' notice. So this is my problem, right? Everyone then goes, okay, so Kamaru Usman's washed. He's not that good anymore. But then he comes in on 9 days' notice against Khamzat Chimaev, and, obviously loses the first round. I think it was a 10-8, loses the second round. but then wins the third round off of 9 days' notice. Obviously has knee problems as well. He's not been in training camp. And for him to come in and have that performance, building in the third round, and everyone thinking, you know, if this fight goes to a fourth and fifth round in a hypothetical situation, you know, Usman could probably win that fight, right? So at what point was he washed? Was he washed after the Leon Edwards head kick? Was it after the headshot dead moment? Was he washed after the third fight in London? Or when did he become unwashed? Or is he still washed even though he was competing against Khamzat? And we've seen what Khamzat does to everybody else. So I think for me, that's such a relevant point. And, you know, again, obviously, as I said in the last episode, one of my favorite fighters is Adesanya. People think he's washed now because of the Dricus du Plessis performance and the Sean Strickland results, right? But his performance in the DDP fight was solid. You know, I thought it was, you know, a pretty even fight. I think he was having success on the feet. And as I've said, it was just a lapse of judgment, a lapse of concentration for that 1 millisecond that cost him the fight. But there is no way you could say that Izzy Adesanya is a washed fighter. And I think this pit culture, taking the credibility or taking the credit away from fighters for when they win, kind of sharing that between fans and media, and sort of putting all the blame on them when they lose, I think it creates this sense of this tension and this immaturity in the way we view fighters. These fighters make unimaginable sacrifices for these fights. And it's not just in the UFC. We were supposed to have somebody on the show today, an MMA champion in another division, a welterweight champion, and he wasn't able to make the show, even though we had organized the interview, because completely fair enough, he's going through the weight cut right now, and he's in a camp for a fight in 2 weeks. These fighters go through immense sacrifice. So the pit culture that we have, taking the credit away from fighters for when they win, and kind of trying to share it between all of us, I think all it does is kind of produce this toxic environment in MMA fandom and especially in MMA media, where we just need to refocus what the sport is about. More than anything, it's about the fighters. Listen, the UFC does a great job of providing a platform for these fighters. The UFC is the best by far in the world. But again, Dana White will tell you it would be nothing without the fighters, right? So, you know, that's going to end off my discussion this week. I kind of got a little bit impassioned there and got a little bit riled up, but it does kind of affect me when I see fans kind of taking this approach to predicting fights. Listen, I'm a huge fan of a lot of the fighters on this card. I'm hoping Mike Malot wins. I'm hoping that, you know, Deniz has a good performance. I mean, that Derek Lewis-Deniz fight, you know, either one of them could win and it's going to be a great fight for the fans. And I'm hoping Moreno wins. But if they don't, it doesn't change how I look at them. It doesn't change the human side of these fighters, the amount of sacrifice, and it doesn't change the value of the work they put in. The result of their fight doesn't change how much they put into that camp, you know, unless they did the early John Jones days where he was out partying every week, you know, then you could probably point to that and say, well, you didn't put your all into it. But many of these fighters put every single last drop of blood, sweat, and tears into their fight camps for the victory on the night. And I think that's something we have to recognize. So yes, no to pit culture in terms of the popular sense at the moment, and no to fans taking fighters' wins as their own. Support these fighters regardless of their wins and losses. Talk about their fights, whether they're in the UFC or not. And, you know, I'm going to be having an interview with somebody who's not in the UFC yet, but an up-and-coming fighter this weekend. So look for that on the next episode, and hopefully we do get that MMA champion on next week or even after his fight in the next couple of weeks. So thank you for watching this episode and have a good day.